Hello and welcome to today's panel discussion with Forrester researcher on the state of the cloud market and how to achieve a new, more agile cloud implementation using FinOps concepts. My name is Wendy Garrett, and I'm a Vice President of Sales Enablement and Portfolio for our Cloud Infrastructure Services at Capgemini here in North America. And I'm going to be your moderator today. But before we begin, let's review today's agenda and cover some quick housekeeping topics. Today's agenda includes a presentation of the state of cloud infrastructure market with an eye towards improving outcomes with FinOps concepts and performance measurements. We're very excited to be joined by Tracy Wu, who is a senior cloud researcher with Forrester Research, who will provide us her insights. And that will be followed by an expert panel discussion. During our expert panel discussion, we would request your participation through using the Teams chat feature. At the end of the panel discussion, we will open the discussion for your questions, but we also want to make this as interactive as possible. So please do post your questions in the chat and we'll do our best to answer while the dialogue is going on. Just a reminder, the session is being recorded and the decks and the recording itself will be made available to you post. With that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce today's panel. So Mike, can we move to the next slide, please? All right, everyone. Again, you know me at this point. Tracy is with us as well from Forrester Research. Tracy leads the research on cloud management, high performance computing, and industry cloud in the financial services, retail, and healthcare sectors. During her tenure at Forrester, she has advised leading Fortune 100 through Fortune 500 companies on their cloud strategies and has been frequently cited in major news outlets, including TechTarget, Business Insider, The Wall Street Journal, and Computer Weekly. So thanks for joining us today, Tracy. We're excited to hear what you have to share. Next, let's introduce our Capgemini panel of cloud experts. First is Alexei Gerasimov. Alexei heads up our cloud infrastructure practice. Also joining us today is Bill Pelzev, who heads up our Cloud Infrastructure Center of Excellence, which is home to all of our cloud architects and our super smart people here at Capgemini. And finally, joining the panel is Jason Hatch, who heads up our Cloud Next Center of Excellence, which is our forward-looking cloud architecture. So now I'm going to hand it over to Tracy to talk about her research into the current state of the cloud market and what the key concerns is that she's uncovered regarding FinOps and management of cloud. Okay, Tracy?
Great, thank you. Okay, so, there's no question that economic times are uncertain right now. And we've seen in the news lots of rounds of layoffs, reorganizations, companies pivoting. Even companies that were wildly successful during the pandemic have seen budget tightening or delayed refreshes. And so if we move on to the next slide, the question comes up as I'm talking to clients there is that, how can I do more with less? Because we still need to operate as a business. We still need to keep on innovating. We still need to have competitive differentiation within that area. But we're operating with a smaller and tighter budget. And there are some key areas that we do need to keep on spending on. So if we move on to the next slide, one of the specific areas is really cloud. Cloud is this foundation of connected platform economies. And the reason why is because it does all of these different things. And a few of the key pillars here is it simplifies engagement for the company, and this is both inside and outside of the company for partners, employees, customers, and that's because they can all reach the same real-time cloud. It enables new business models. Within the pandemic, we certainly saw that with rapid delivery and other sorts of new business models that were being transformed across all industries. And that's something that cloud helped to enable. And it wouldn't be possible without that specific technology. It can also be used to detect network patterns. So it can be helped to, see patterns of an entire community health and to be able to predict different sorts of medicine or different sorts of care or infrastructure services that need to be in place to take charge of that specific community. And so if we go into the next slide, looking at, well, why are companies still spending on cloud? Well, we went over some of those key decision points then, which is that cloud is all of these specific areas. But if we really dive into the data there, we asked this question to our clients, which is, what were your organization's top reasons to adopt cloud services? And at the top of that is improved security. Now, this is a reason that we also get for why are you still hesitant to adopt cloud is also the same thing with security as well. But increasingly, folks have found that they've been able to trust the cloud service providers, their technology. They found that they have a smaller footprint. They found that it's actually cheaper to adopt cloud. And so it's actually been one of the biggest driving engagements as there. But it's also other areas as well. So improving customer experience. We talked about this with rapid service delivery. This has also helped to just increase and engage with our digital engagement with our customers as we were in the pandemic and trying to reach out to our customers and our end users, but also our employees. It's helped to also improve the employee experience. You see things like it's faster than waiting for IT. The functionality has met its requirements. And this is all because you're no longer at the mercy of your capital expenditures of having to purchase one type of infrastructure, all in the name of getting a better deal. Now you have a wealth of an availability of heterogeneous infrastructure at your service. And so now you can really let your developers go off and provide the best sort of services they can provide. There's also other areas as well, ease of scalability. It can be cheaper getting that than, say, purchasing, making a large capital purchases. And then perhaps, maybe you need machines in specific geographies for either latency or performance reasons or data residency requirements. So if we move on to the next slide, what are they spending it on? And, which of the following cloud initiatives is your organization? This is a question that we ask customers. The biggest one is that they're investing in their cloud networking technology and architecture. They're trying to build out infrastructure to really help support cloud services so that they can get the best out of their cloud investment. But they're also looking at other areas as well. So optimizing cloud spend, this is an area that I specifically cover. I get a lot of questions about this. This is something that was heightened through the pandemic, and certainly now as we're going into a recession and economic slowdown, which is we need to keep spending cloud. We still have a budget for it. How can we make sure that we really don't mess up with our cloud spend? How can we make sure that we don't have runaway costs? Other areas too is they're looking at migrating existing applications to cloud. They're looking to secure the platform for external collaboration, data AI. They're looking to build in all of these new and different types of innovative services like AI and ML, building out a industry cloud technologies type, looking at specific industries as well. They're also building out specific areas so that they can make sure that their management of their cloud environment is much better. So they're building out centralized management across multiple clouds. They're creating a cloud center of excellence to make sure that they can support and provide all those different sorts of initiatives. And then they're also looking at specifically cloud native areas. So like leveraging Kubernetes platforms and services, not listed here, but also serverless as well. So if we move on to the next part, which is what are key decision points that companies face within the cloud? So these are specific things to think about. And these are questions that I get a lot from my customers, or from all of our clients, which are either embarking within their cloud strategy early on, or they are, further later on within that specific area, which is, what are the specific infrastructure assets and parallel strategies you need to be thinking about? So, with cloud, you now have this option or availability of heterogeneous infrastructure. And so now we have this area of having maybe too many jams or too many options within a store. You walk into a store and you have 30 different flavors, say, versus, just strawberry and grape. And now it becomes this issue of, well, which infrastructure services should I be using? Should I be using different ones? Are there perhaps parallel strategies that we need to be thinking about as well? And so that's something that companies really need help with, and something that they need to figure out which is choosing the right services, even choosing the right t-shirt sizes, making sure and choosing your app priority mix. So are you building new? If you're using cloud, are you building new applications? Will you be migrating or modernizing existing ones? And if you're doing so, how do you go about doing that? Which ones do you choose first? Which ones do you decide on for later, or which ones do you actually just replace with SaaS at all, or don't migrate because if one doesn't make sense for latency or performance reasons, or for data residency requirements, or because it's just plain too difficult and it doesn't make sense for the company targets right now. There are others as well. List and identify technology requirements. So being able to identify what are your cloud initiatives, what are your cloud services, what are you trying to provide? Does the technology that you have right now support that? Do you need to be able to get those things within cloud services? Where can you find that? Does your cloud provider provide that for you? Looking also at determining the impact of location. So we talked a little bit about data residency and latency and performance, but these are key areas that companies really think about, which is, especially if we're global disparate companies, are these areas that we are thinking about, are we in compliance within the specific areas? Can that data leave a specific region, or does that need to stay within a specific region? Does my cloud service provider have an availability zone within that specific area? Being ruthlessly honest about institutional behaviors. So this is understanding where your company is just within its mindset, within its attitude about cloud technologies. Is it ready to adopt cloud technologies? Because it's not just about clicking a button saying, yes, I'm using cloud. It's also about making sure and thinking about culturally, does your company, is it ready to think about cloud? Is it ready to adopt things like an OpEx type model? Will it be more willing and accepting of a show back and charge back type model? Is it ready to think about cloud spend, on a per minute, per second type basis? Other areas as well as just evaluating your current talent pool. So understanding, do you have the talent to support the cloud environments that you have? If you have folks that are mostly specifically looking at one cloud service provider, and you're looking to spread your workloads across multiple cloud providers, do you have the talent to be able to support those specific areas? Because that's an area that a lot of companies are thinking about, which is, I want to build out a cloud center of excellence. I want to build a cloud team, but I'm having a very hard time building out that talent. So is that something that you hire externally? Is that something that you build internally? Or do you hire someone that's maybe less qualified and then you help upskill them? And then other areas as well, knowing your company's financial reality. So can you actually support your cloud initiatives? Can you actually support the cloud initiatives and spends that you have? Moving on to the next slide. So some of the pitfalls that companies can get into, which is some of the wrong cloud strategies to think about. So the biggest one, cost escalation and runaway costs. This is an easy one to think about. This is an easy one to point out, but it's an area that can easily happen. You've seen in the news like, oh, actually, I was not thinking about cost management at all, but then actually I did start to think about it, and it saved me tens of millions, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars within cloud spend. And the great thing about this is that this is something that's very easy to do. There are a lot of very easy tricks to think about, like right sizing, scheduling, even employing a third-party management tool or an external consultancy service to help you with that. Choosing cloud first over reliability, resilience, and standardization. So this is an area that we were staging, especially before the pandemic, where people were very madly rushing to get to the cloud. And so they were just thinking about, well, I just need to innovate. I need to think about this. I need to get my cloud workloads or my workloads to the cloud as quickly as possible. And then realize that as they were stressing those systems, that they were either overly complex, overly brittle, maybe they weren't standardized across the entire organization. And so when they were thinking about enterprise-wide upgrading or organization, that was something that they couldn't actually do. And so when they came to any sort of enterprise-wide remediation or improvement, it became very, very difficult. And this is the same thing with security as well. So you've heard about it. There's always in the news, there's lots of in the news about data breaches and multi-million-dollar fines. And that was, really in the name of trying to get to cloud first in a lot of different cases, while ignoring security. And so also things like setting unrealistic deadlines in cloud migration. So this is the same thing of choosing cloud first. We will speak with companies that are thinking we want to fully migrate to a specific public cloud provider within 12 months. Well, depending on the complexity and depending on how firmly entrenched you are within your legacy systems, that may not be realistic. And it may be that you need to take a step back and think about, do I actually want to migrate all? Or are there specific areas where I'm just going to replace with SaaS, or I'm going to build net new, or I'm going to stretch out that timeline from 1 year to actually 2 years or 3 years because it makes more sense for the way my business operates and the way my talent acquisition has been happening. Not understanding shared cloud responsibility. So people can walk into the cloud providers thinking, okay, well, it's going to help me improve security, so I'll just migrate my workloads to the cloud, and then they'll just be secure. Well, that's actually not the case. And this is something that the cloud providers preach about, which is your responsibility in making sure that your workloads stay in compliance and secure according to your regulatory requirements for your industry or for your specific area. And so understanding that there are specific areas where the cloud providers can help to secure your workloads, but then also understanding that there are a lot of different responsibilities that you actually need to provide, especially if you are a SaaS provider. Your data aren't necessarily secure just because it's located within a cloud provider. The person that's actually in charge of that is actually the company itself, regardless of where it resides. Not knowing where your cloud data is stored. So this is the same thing, which is it may be that your data can't be stored within a specific region or function, and that actually needs to be moved to a specific area, like a specific specific on-premises data center, or specific availability zone or region, or it needs to be put in a colo center. And so understanding where your customers' needs are, whether this is something that you're providing for external customers, whether this is something that you're providing for your internal end users, knowing where that data is stored, knowing that they have to, being aware of any sort of regulatory compliance or reasons because of that. And then also failing to properly delete our unnecessary cloud data. So this is just an area of cloud spend and cloud waste. If there is cloud data that you don't need to hang on to, then really, why are you spending that money? Why are you hanging on to that and storing it in a specific area or with specific workloads or processes? Making sure that you are optimized and making sure that you're operating in a clean and efficient manner makes a lot of sense for most companies. So moving on to the next slide, which is how do you measure successful cloud performance? So there are a lot of different ways to do that. There are a lot of intangible ways you can do that, like looking at company culture or attitude or ethos. But these are specific KPIs to think about. So looking at things like percentage of cloud spend savings, how much are you saving in cloud spend? If you are optimizing cloud spend correctly, it should be roughly around 30% of your cloud spend. The same with total cost of cloud spend per user. So are you saving the right amount per user? Are they staying under budget? Is their spend actually staying on track with what you have budgeted for them? Are you actually delivering the average time to deliver new services? Is that something that is staying under your targets, or is that something that's continually overshooting? Do you have a target that you're setting for that? Make sure that you do. The minutes of downtime for business critical apps, similarly, make sure that it's under a reasonable margin. And then make sure that you set that time as well. Don't just bury your head in the sand and think, well, we'll never have any sort of downtime, but make sure that you are actually providing that sort of support and understanding that there will be times when your business critical apps will be down, and what is that acceptable margin? Average cloud-based app response time, similarly the same thing there. How long will it take to load specific experiences, specific pages? Number of service complaints, so this could also be both internal as well as external users as well. And then number of qualified staff with cloud administrative skills. So going back to the issue of the cloud skills gap and how there is a lot of dearth within the cloud talent there, and how much staff do you have on hand? Are you always going through attrition? How can you do to hang on to those specific employees? So these are these are KPIs that I'm bringing up and things to think about. Now, I want to pass this back on to the Capgemini team. So if we move on to the next slide, thinking about, what are the questions that they have? I know that you work a lot with cloud customers that are working within the cloud industry, and they're thinking about migrating or adopting cloud. And I know that you work closely with them, so I wanted to pass that back on over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Tracy. That was a lot of discussion points in there, no question about it. So, based on your research that we saw today, it seems to be there's a general consensus that the market and the spend is rising, right? I think we have a quote in here that said 87% of organizations are adopting IaaS and PaaS. And of that, they're projecting this to be, over the next 4 years, hundreds of billions of dollar industry, right? That's huge. It's massive. It's another shift in the world of technology that we've all been playing in for a while, I'm sure. But with that, there's different opinions on exactly what FinOps is, right? I think most of us would agree it's really driving that financial accountability, right, through an operational framework, which brings the technology, the business, the finances all together. But based on that backdrop that Tracy just provided us with, talking about those clear need for measures and controls, I guess my first question to the panel is, what you see on the screen, which is really, where is all this cloud spend going, and is it effective? Are we handling it correctly? So Alexi, I'm going to shoot that one at you first, because I think that's relevant for your organization.
Yeah, perfect. I think you're leading the witness. I'm gonna jump in and say no, that the spend is definitely not effective across the board. To your point, the data shows that we spend about $500 billion a year on public cloud and a variety of things, and about $200 billion on infrastructure alone, PaaS, IaaS, et cetera. And the spend is only going up. And to use one of Tracy's data points, 26% of organizations are saying they're going to spend some portion of their time next year rationalizing that spend. What does it tell you? It tells you we're not really spending it effectively. And the reason is, and that's why the FinOps, the movement, I guess the topic is getting bigger, is we'll move to the cloud, but it's not cloud for the sake of cloud. People now want to see what they're spending the money on. They're not necessarily against spending more. They definitely want to spend it more effectively. And the truth is, we really probably don't have the processes and procedures to govern that spend. Yeah, some companies have the organizational maturity, but most of them don't. Again, borrow one of Tracy's quotes, the being ruthlessly honest with the organizational maturity, I just don't think it's there. So yeah, we're spending the money probably not in the way we should be.
Awesome. And I love that you brought that out, Alexi, because that was a statement I also kind of cued in on. Bill, how about you? Any thoughts on your side?
Yes. So I think the paradigm has shifted a bit in regards to in the old data center world. If you needed compute, network, or storage, you'd have to go through IT, and they'd have to go through procurement, and then it might be a 5, 6, 7 week type of issue. Today, application teams can say, I need more compute, network, or storage, press a button and get it immediately. So while that might embrace application rollouts and application improvements, it also embraces a way your costs can escalate every single day just by people saying, hey, I want more of this, or I want more of that. So I think the whole control mechanisms in regards to how we allocate resources, and we'll talk about this later, and how do we bill back and charge back for those, is the pro and the con, if you will, of cloud. The nice thing is that if I need it, I can get it now. I can get it immediately. The other side of that is, and you're also going to pay for it immediately, and that's just a paradigm shift in cloud computing.
Yeah, agreed. And I think somebody coined the phrase cloud creep, right? And that's really what we're talking about. So,
absolutely.
All right. So next slide, please. So given the state of cloud now, and this mix of, operating policies, measurements, control capabilities, methods, right? How do we manage that growth and transition and yet still be in control of all this? Right. So we stated the problem, but I'm not sure we've talked about some of the answers. So Bill, I'm going to shoot that one back to you again, because I think you, again, this is relevant for your space.
Sure, and it's a good question. So we understand the issue. What can we actually do about it? And the nice thing about public cloud is there are other options that potentially we didn't have in the old data center space. So things like reserved instances, as an example, which can be more cost effective. Tiered storage options, okay? Spinning up additional compute resources or memory resources if you're doing a website when your traffic is highest, and then spinning those down because maybe you don't need those at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. to still give the customer user experience what they need. So there's a lot of dials, if you will, and options in regards to, looking to what you need to do. Cold storage or archive storage is much cheaper than just, making a copy or a snapshot. So there's another example. So you have to holistically kind of look at what are the options to be more cost effective in regards to still providing the experience that everybody needs, including your application teams and most importantly, your end users and your clients, but to do it in a more cost-effective way. So that takes an active management, and it also makes sure that your application teams are aware of these different options and how it could bring the costs better under control moving forward.
Awesome. And Tracy, I know that you, when we were prepping for this, you had some thoughts on this one as well.
Yeah, this is an easy one. So there are a lot of things you can do. Like I said before, you can use cost management tooling. The cloud service providers provide one that's free to use. They do provide some light optimization. And this is great for a company that's first embarking on their cloud journey, or if they want to double check their third-party tooling. And a lot of people actually do that. They use that in conjunction with each other. So those provide cost management, visibility, optimization. They don't provide multi-cloud optimization. And that's when you want to get into a third-party tooling that does provide that specific area. Or you can even use a third-party consultancy to actually help and manage your cloud spend as well. That's another route as well. But specific things that they do are things like what we were talking about earlier, which is, getting into committed spend. So looking at volume, length, term discounts with RIs. You can also look at specific areas like savings plan as well. A few of the cloud service providers have that. And then looking at easy things too, like scheduling. So just scheduling workloads and instances so that they're not running all the time. If they're not running during, holiday hours, weekend, off work hours, you can just turn those areas off. You can also do things like just providing alerts. So that's another area to just help to kind of, ingrain this new mindset of, hey, actually, it's no longer about you provision as many services as you can. And then when you're done with the project, then you can, give that all back maybe. With cloud, you're being charged, per minute or per second. And so being able to put in alerts there where specific users are maybe going over their budget, over their target. And you can do that by looking at forecasted spend. So a lot of these tools have forecasted spending as well. And then right sizing, like I'd mentioned before, making sure that you're using the right t-shirt size, using these tools to identify things like idle, unattached volumes, or ones that aren't being used at all. Those are a few specific and very easy ways to manage your cloud spend.
Awesome. So it sounds like a lot. Mike, I'm going to have you run to the next slide. It does sound a little arduous. It sounds overly daunting in a lot of ways. We talked about cold storage. We talked about, multiple areas on your side of turning off apps on non-working hours, things like that. All of that seems to be a bit daunting. So Jason, I'm going to throw this one at you because, you are the future of cloud here at Capgemini. Is there a simpler approach? Have you seen anything that really kind of makes it easier for us to run the playbook?
Well, I don't know if there's a simpler approach, but I think there's ways to make it less daunting, right? So certainly the earlier you can implement good governance and controls in your cloud journey, the is to enforce those. We have customers who have implemented good FinOps management from day one of their initial cloud rollout, right? And that's always given them very effective insights and transparency to the spend. Now, that doesn't mean that they've always effectively used their cloud resources. It just means that they've had the data to be able to do so. It still requires active management and understanding what's being used. You might know why something's on, what's on. You might not know why it's on. So going through and being able to have the right governance to enforce that throughout the processes, to be able to look at those commercial models that Bill identified to go, how should I effectively be spending this? and going through and managing things consistently across your environment. It doesn't mean that if you haven't done this up front that you can't retroactively go back and implement good cost management. We've had customers that were early adopters in cloud that we've then gone through and just said, let's implement some waste management and financial controls in your environment and tackle low-hanging fruit. And over a couple months, you can identify, clean up, and turn off all of those kind of orphan services and storage that creep up in some of these environments. So underutilized VMs, orphan VMs that are just running there with no purpose, storage that's unattached and just kind of floating out there that we can archive and shut down and move to those less costly storage mechanisms. And then going forward, it's very easy. It's easy to start automating management into your environment. So anyone that uses infrastructure as code or automated CI/CD and provisioning in your environment, you can put in the triggers to enforce good governance. So making sure tagging is correct in these environments. If you have to provide, and our recommendation is anything that gets provisioned should have a cost estimate associated with it. What do you expect to spend when you roll this out into a cloud environment? Making sure that's built into the deployment of your services allows you to effectively manage that going forward.
Agreed. Alexi, again, I know
I was gonna jump in, actually, just tease Jason. Sounds like there is an easy answer. Just shut it off. No, one of my ex-colleagues used to have this saying, and I don't know if he came up with it or stole it from somebody else's. Cloud is not pay per use. Cloud is pay for what you forget to turn off. Which is so true. It's just we all have the best intentions, right? And just go in there, and all of a sudden, boom, the bill comes, and you see the big problem. No, you're right, Jason. I think fundamentally what you said is it's a proverbial, how do I get in shape? It's diet and exercise. Fundamentally, you got to go back to the basics. You build the right architecture and figure out what you're trying to do. And then you're right, pay attention to what actually is happening in your environment and make decisions based on it. Now, if you got automation in place, it makes it a lot easier than just having a bunch of people manually monitoring something. So yeah, so my recommendation would be get a strategy right up front, put a fair amount of architectural review in place, implement the right automation, and have whatever vendors or products to help you monitor and remediate the issues, and turn off the things that you don't want to use.
Excellent. Thank you. So now I want to remind everybody in the audience, you're welcome to put questions in the chat, and we'll address them as we can. So all right, guys. So we've talked a little bit about what the pain point is, and then maybe some of the solutions that go along with it. Now we need to talk a little bit about talent. So you've got architects out there. What are the areas that they should be focused on given the new direction of the world over the next 4 years, and really where should their focus be? And this one, I'm gonna leave it up there. I'm gonna say, Alexi, let's start with you since you've got the.
Yeah, no, and it actually just continuing the theme. Thank you. When you continue the theme I just mentioned, if you think about it, back to the FinOps, it's similar to the whole DevOps movement that started. Hey, let's separate and break the silos, and let's have a continuous delivery model where developers and operations happily coexist. Well, the reality is then you got DevSecOps, you got security in place. Now you got the FinOps. So now we're asking everyone to start paying attention to the financial implications of their decision making. So the architects historically were focused very much on, hey, look, I can spin things up, like Bill said, spin things down. I can have auto-scaling groups and get the right servers, et cetera. But not a lot of them actually paid attention to the right architecture from a financial perspective. So what architects can do now is first and foremost understand, is the spend effective? Just because you're spending more money, like we mentioned, the spend is growing. Just because you're spending more money doesn't mean it's bad. If it's spent effectively, that's actually a pretty good thing. So what they need to do is they need to start architecting the solution more appropriately. That means staying on top of the latest developments by the hyperscaler. I don't want to shout anybody out, but for example, AWS is moving to Graviton services, right? If a new CPU allows you to spend less money and deliver more value, well, architects need to make sure that the architecture actually supports that. So from that perspective, just basic fundamentals. Is the architecture correct? Are we using the best services? Are we shutting things down when we need to? Are we incorporating enough security, reliability, availability, et cetera? So that's my take.
Awesome. So we did get a question in the chat, and maybe, Jason, I know you specifically could probably answer this. What percentage of the companies that you work with have some sort of formal FinOps practice in them? Let's start there.
Relatively low. I'd say probably less than a third of our customers right now have an active FinOps capability within their cloud center of excellence and within their platform engineering and management teams. Everyone is looking at it now, right? I think, every time I talk to a CTO, CIO, or someone responsible for cloud within an organization, management of spend is one of the top topics that come up, and being able to understand that. We have a customer who has implemented, a really large high performance compute cloud environment. It's driving tremendous value for their business, right? They're able to experiment, they're able to run these algorithms very quickly and very fast, but there's no cost control and there's no tie back to what's being run versus the cost of this environment that's in their environment. So we're working with them right now on not only educating the people within IT that own the budget, but also the application owners and the users of these environments who are doing things that influence spend. So training and evangelization of financial management is something that is spreading out from IT through enterprise architecture, usually into other parts of the business who influence that spend. Certainly being able to do chargeback and showback helps with that. So, when that business unit is now accountable or responsible for the spend that they're driving, they certainly pay more attention to it, or at least understand it, or tie it to the value that they're generating, right? High cost of cloud or increasing cloud spend is perfectly acceptable as long as it's tied to more revenue and more value generation for the company. When those numbers get out of sync, we have to start looking and making sure we're allocating assets most effectively.
Yeah, but I think that's key. And that goes into our next question. Really, it's about, charging back and how this all, flows within the organization and it ensures that we do see an ROI on that spend. So I appreciate your dialogue there, Jason, so apologies. So maybe, Bill, do you have any thoughts on this chargeback concept and how that's going to flow within an organization?
Sure. Yes, I do. And this is going to be even more relevant as we go forward. It's funny, on the previous question, which Jason brought up in regards to the companies that have a formal FinOps for cloud. My generic answer is it's going to be a lot more in 2023 than it was in 2022, just because people are now getting the bills for what they're doing. So in regards to billing back, I think we have to go back to what we kind of did in the old days, but put it in the new cloud paradigm, and that's having a menu or offering of services for the users of cloud computing resources and telling them upfront what it's going to cost. So, for example, if they have to have high availability or a disaster recovery schema, what is that going to cost and what is it based on? If I need to have super high performance, or I need to be able to fail over to different regions if something should happen because I always have to be on, what is that going to cost? Because it doesn't come free. The good news is cloud enables a lot of that rather easily, but there's associated costs with it. So I think it's just transparency and attention to detail in regards to the users of your cloud computing paradigm. What is it going to cost for me to get X, Y, and Z? And it's above and beyond just compute, network, and storage. It's the entire experience and things like data protection and things of that nature. So if you're upfront and transparent, the amount of surprises on that monthly bill will definitely go down. And there's also different approaches. Do you pay, if I want a VM, do you pay for that VM? Or if I need compute resources, do I just get billed back by the utilization of my compute in a pool of VMs, as an example? So there's two different approaches there. So you have to determine what is best for your user base and what is best in regards to billing back and having everybody understand what the true costs are going to be prior to getting that monthly bill.
I like that idea. You're talking basically a price catalog, buy off the price catalog and you'll know exactly how much you're spending. So Tracy, do you have any thoughts? We do have a question in the chat about, what would be a good KPI to compare how different or cloud optimized, right? Different teams are within an organization, and beyond just the pure dollar cost, really how they optimizing the spend and optimizing the usage to correlate correctly.
Well, I mean, then I think it bleeds over into the other KPIs. It's certainly true that just by looking at amount of dollars spent or how much you're saving isn't like the end all be all indicator of how optimized or how well you are using your cloud usage. But then it goes into the other areas, which is, your app service delivery time. How much app downtime do you have? Are you meeting your business and fiscal targets? Are you meeting the specific areas or revenue streams that you're looking at? Are you providing the right sort of customer and employee experience that you're looking for? So, it is true. It is one thing where, you can certainly spend less on cloud, but if you're not using cloud correctly, all of these other areas will start to be affected as well.
Yeah, I think maybe from that cloud optimization KPI as well, Tracy, all the things you identified usually go into that initial business case for the ROI of what you're going to implement. So typically with customers, if we're saying, am I using cloud effectively, a good KPI is percentage of spend compared to budget, right? Because when you're defining that budget, that's when you have the opportunity to actually weigh that against the ROI of whatever you're doing. So over time, as long as your spend aligns up with the budget that you set for that, assuming your budgeting process was effective, but that's a whole different conversation, right? Then you can say I'm effectively using the cloud services or resources for that application, project, program, whatever you're doing, right? Because when you submitted that, when that was approved, there was an ROI of some sort, value, speed, cost savings, efficiency that you're tying to that program. And if you align to that over time, you're efficiently using the cloud services for that project and program. That's how we've tracked it before with customers.
Excellent. So one more question. For percentage of cloud spend savings, did you say that 30% was considered efficient? I think, Tracy, was that you that mentioned that?
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure we address the question.
Most people will see around 30%. It may be a little bit more, a little bit less, but if you're around that sort of cost savings, cloud spend savings, then you're generally on target with everyone else.
Okay, excellent. All right, let's move on to the next question. We only have about 15 minutes, and I want to make sure we hit on all of the questions in the chat as well. So quickly talk about talent. Does everybody have enough AWS, Azure, and Google, cloud experts to be successful? I think we all know the answer to that is no. But Jason, I'm going to throw that one at you from the beginning here, if you wouldn't mind addressing that.
Well, I hope not. As a service provider, we'd be probably out of business if everyone did. But no, I mean, cloud, certainly the skills to effectively help customers leverage cloud. There's a shortage in the market, and we've all seen that over the last couple of years. From a CAP perspective, we're certainly investing heavily in a couple areas. One, bringing on new resources and training them in the proper way to implement and develop and utilize and engineer cloud applications. And those resources are then deployed to our customers. From when we talk to customers around reskilling, training of environments or resources in their environment, there's some skill sets that translate really well into cloud, right? People that have been doing things in IT, are able to make the leap to then managing different services or developing in different ways in the cloud very easily. Certainly certification and the right training are part of that. And then there's some roles or capabilities that don't always translate as well. So making sure you've got the right career path and the right destination for everyone in your environment as you transition your IT, is something that we work from a planning perspective with our customers.
Excellent. All right, Tracy, any thoughts on that real quick?
Yeah, this is an area that we see a lot of questions about, which is, I mean, I was just talking to a major global financial services organization that was based in North America, and they said, well, we're going to migrate to cloud almost all of our workloads. We want to build out a 46-person cloud center of excellence. And I asked them, well, how is that hiring going for you? And they said, not well at all. And so that's something that just is a reality right now. With cloud skills, there just isn't enough talent to go around for all of the cloud needs that are happening. And so businesses need to be flexible. They need to be thinking about, what are other areas that you can do that. And so I said before, internal upskilling, that's certainly a specific way. Hiring maybe a little bit lower than the targets that you were looking for. You can also engage with external consultancies to help it with that. And they can do a few different things. They can do supplemental where they can help actually manage that the cloud environment for you, but they can also be the ones that also teach you how to do that as well. And so you can use their immersion training or programs, and that's something that companies are doing as well.
Excellent. Well, I think that feeds really well into the last question, which is really, do you see the need in the marketplace today for the GSI or this work to be done by the GSI, given the competencies? And can I have you answer that one for us, Tracy, at a high level?
Yeah. It is certainly the biggest part of most companies' enterprise transformation. Should it be done by a cloud provider or GSI? I think the cloud providers will answer that for you. If you are a big enough spender, they will help you do that. For most organizations, you are not a big enough spender. And so if you are looking for external consultancy or help, you really need to be thinking about a GSI within that specific area. Cloud providers can help you with some of them will even assign a TAM to you, a technical account manager, to help with those specific areas. But really, if you're looking for a white glove experience, you're looking for something where you're being led through these specific areas of digital transformation, going from crawl, walk, run, that's an area that you need a GSI for.
Excellent. All right, guys, I'm going to open it up for questions at this point because I want to make sure that we have time to address the few that are in the chat here. One of them, and we'll start with Zen, is how should we set up a FinOps org for a SaaS company whose cloud spend is COGS? I don't know who wants to answer that, Alexi or
Yeah,
Jason?
no, happy to jump in, but just before I do that, can I just add a little color in the talent and the GSI and other things? One of the things that I see, so first of all, nobody has enough talent, and shameless plug, yes, we're hiring. Feel free to send the resumes in. Nobody has enough talent, and it's only going to get worse, as indicated by all the surveys and all the conversations with the CIOs. And who should do the work? Well, if you think about it, presumably every organization is appropriately right-sized to do what's needed to be done at the moment. So Tracy's comment about a customer that decides to move to all-in the public cloud and hire a 46-person COE, well, they probably don't have the staff to begin with because all the staff was busy doing what they're supposed to do in the first place. So when you start thinking about, who can help me? Yes, absolutely. Customers can hire their own staff, and that's okay, depending what it is. If it's a temporary project, it might not make sense. This is back to the hyperscaler or GSI. Somebody can help. If it's more of an ongoing, you can probably hire your own. The reality is it's a tough one. It's a tough war on talent. Now, specifically, sorry to digress a bit, but specifically in this question about the percentage and the FinOps org for SaaS, similar to the conversation of how do you define cloud effectiveness? Well, for a SaaS organization, you can look at a couple things. One, you obviously have to figure out, are you effectively using the fundamental sort of underlying technology to deliver whatever SaaS services you have? And that goes back to all the normal, uptime utilization, networking, compute, storage, which, by the way, you guys all know, I assume that majority of the revenue for public cloud providers is still from the basics, compute, storage, and networking. So you got to figure out, from architectural perspective, have you effectively set up the organization to support that? And then some of the other metrics we mentioned, it's a customer satisfaction, value delivery, the uptime, all of those FinOps principles you have to tie in together to figure out, I'm spending X, am I getting the value out of it? That's my take. Jason, Bill, you guys want to add anything?
No, I think that's good. I just add, what your cost of goods sold is. Your cloud spend should be a proportion of that. The more you can and you guys should be driven to optimize your cloud spend, because that creates that's more revenue for you, right? That's increasing your profitability on that if you can lower your overall cost. So I think, as Alexi said, the right architecture that you can scale and tweak effectively to scale effectively as your cost of your sales increase, without getting to an area where you're ramping up too much that your ratio of profitability goes down. So it's a combination of, I think, the right architecture and then being ruthless in optimization of your cloud spend to be able to drive that profitability.
Yeah, great. And Zen has another really great question. Zen, thank you for posting this, because I'm hoping it's coming at some point in the future. A convergence of a universal billing construct across AWS, GCP, Azure, and how to manage bills from all those different CSPs more effectively, right? Is it coming, guys? Is there a third-party platform that's going to make this easier for an organization to manage all these vendors, especially as we're moving to more of a hybrid environment, right? Anybody want to take a stab at that one?
Sure, I can talk to that. So shameless plug for my wave evaluation. We just did a wave evaluation of all of these different sorts of third-party tools that are out there. So if you're a Forrester client, you can get a hold of this report. There may be licensed copies floating around out there to look at as well. That's one of the most, I'd say, the most in-depth evaluations of these as well. But we get this question too, which is, should we build our own tool? Should we use the native tooling? In general, we advise against building your own tool because the amount of services that are coming out of the cloud service providers, they have roughly 200 products, maybe 500 to 600 updates per quarter. Being able to keep up with all of these and provide the right sort of tooling gets to be really overwhelming. I was just talking to one client who had built out this very, very elaborate tool, was very proud of it, but then was just finding it difficult to stay on top of all of the different sorts of services out there. And so that's something that we really advise against. A lot of people actually use the native tooling in conjunction with the third-party tooling itself. They do that for a few reasons. One, because the tooling is actually pretty solid and pretty good. It's another way to kind of double check whether the cost recommendations or savings is actually what's accurate or can actually be confirmed by two different sources. And that's something that's been, pretty prominent use because the native tooling is free for the most part. Is there a convergence of universal billing constructs across the different hypers? This is actually something that is a working group that is being explored by the FinOps Foundation, which is something that's a nonprofit foundation by the CNCF. And they're actually looking to do that because the billing is relatively similar, but there are different taxonomies, different terms, different ways of using this. And so there has been this push for them to sort of converge and build something that's more unified so that it makes it much easier to digest the billing itself.
Awesome. Looking forward to that. All right, gentlemen, any other comments on that before we adjourn?
I just love Tracy's comment of don't build your own.
Yes.
There's plenty of companies that do that for you.
Yeah. Excellent. All right, so we're going to give everybody about 5 minutes back. Appreciate your attendance today and the questions as well. Again, this will be available to you here shortly from a recording standpoint and the PowerPoint presentation as well. Look forward to the next round of discussions with Forrester Research, and thanks again for your time today.